Good morning, Bill.
Morning, Bill.
How are you, man?
Well, Mark Zuckerberg hates me.
They said he said, Jake, I don't care about your impact. You should be focusing only on attention. And Jake says,
Thousand.
nah, bro. And he goes, I'll show you. I won't let you connect your Zoom, the second most popular tool on the planet right now, if headlines are to be believed, to my tool. So, but it
Yep.
works for John Small Mountain every time. Maybe we should just learn from this lesson, and I should be doing these in the mornings. Maybe we should, as opposed to just trying to fight the never-ending fight, we should just take the higher road and do it differently.
I mean, that would be too efficient and smart.
The two guys who are super focused on efficiency and productivity also have stubborn side as well.
Yeah,
Oh,
and that's
man.
we would have nothing to talk about on the show then. Like we'd be out of ideas. So.
That's true. Yeah, we would not have much to talk about if we weren't complaining about Zuck and things.
Facebook. Yeah. Well,
Oh,
how's your day
so
yesterday?
I don't know what's going on, man. I'm in a funk a little bit. I can't really put my thumb exactly on why. Like, I really thought it was just like the drop off in meetings and just like having a little bit of paranoia, or not paranoia, but just like a little bit of anxiousness because, I normally run pretty heavy weeks. But was in a odd mood for most of the afternoon yesterday. Got interviewed in a Facebook group, and that went pretty well. They said that it was that there was value there, which is nice. Did office hours. Had a new guy join. His name is Habib, and he has a social media agency in Pakistan. And so we were kind of talking through some of his hurdles, and he has the one that everybody does. That if you're overseas, a lot of people here don't want to work with somebody overseas, and he had some ideas about kind of shortcutting some of that. And I was like, man, yeah, like trying to shortcut that or obfuscate where you are is just going to come back and bite you. So instead, just lead with it. Just absolutely lead with it. And
Yeah.
so we had a good conversation about that. And then let's see. Ooh, I got to talk with a guy about a project that I'm doing for Instagram. I'll dig more into that later. I'm not ready to share it yet. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about that though. And I was done by 4:15. I sent Jake a video about like some punching techniques for Wing Chun, how to do that. And then what happened after that? That was really it. Oh no, I played video games for too long and was just kind of like in a surly mood after that. I think it was the video game and bad posture and things like this, but I was just kind of in a mood and yeah, was not a great showing of John yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It happens though.
Those days happen. Absolutely.
I absolutely do.
Yeah. Mine was pretty good. Pretty good. Got work done. Kind of working on some deadline stuff. Had an interesting conversation with a client, and this is something I was going to ask you about experience-wise, what you've had. I think a lot of us do this when we were like, hey, I want to work with this top client, but then you're like, oh, this person is close enough, so we're going to work with them, sort of thing. Particularly, like one of the reasons, especially when I'm out networking and stuff, I'll say I love to work with organizations that already have teams in place. Like they've already got people doing stuff. Anytime I get off that map and it's just a founder and a couple people doing all the work, there are built-in just traps for them where they get stressed, really high stress, because they have to hit deadlines and try to grow things and scale things by themselves, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. And they just don't have the hours in the day. So they're like working 18 hours or they're, it's high stress. And so when you get to friction points with clients that normally would be like, oh, that was a misunderstanding. Okay, gotcha. Makes sense. Let's keep moving. They're already here. It's like conversations don't always go as well as they should just because they're already just in this spot and you're down here just chilling. And so I had one of those twice this week. Yeah. And the guy's super great. Don't get me wrong. He's good to work with, but the level of stress that he's working with it really took us 30 minutes to just get to where the actual issue was, because he had to come down from here, from
Mm.
a stress level, to finally be like, oh, okay, I just didn't misunderstood, like, so like that's one of the reasons that I really like prefer to work with a group that's doing only this stuff, like a marketing group, or you know, not the founder who's trying to do all 9 things at once.
Yeah,
And that was, and this week I just had another experience in that where it was like, gosh, like those are exhausting conversations sometimes.
for sure. It's funny that you bring this up. We'll talk about it in a second. But if you know that it stresses you out and you don't have the impact that you want when you're working with a small team, can I ask why you said yes to the client in the first place?
I don't make all the final decisions at work.
Ah, okay, that's fair. When you
Yeah.
sat down with James and said, "Hey, my concern is that this is a very small team. We normally operate better with big teams. Are you sure this is going to be a good client for us?" How did that conversation go?
Agree. That's definitely what we want to do, but we need the money.
Ah, okay,
So
that's fair.
uh,
So,
before
how
we
do
this one,
you? So if the concern is overload and stress and not enough time, is there a dialed back version or an extended timeline version of this thing that works better for smaller teams?
yes, there is, but I think this is one of those the hooks or the traps that happens with I think this type of customer is they're very ambitious. They want to scale quickly.
Hmm.
They don't have the team and the time and the resources to scale quickly. So it's like that thing we always talk about. You either have time, you have money, you have quality, you have, or like it's that same trap. So they want to grow fast. They don't have all the resources to grow fast.
Hmm.
Where they want to take our standard track 90-day, they don't have, the resources to make it happen in 90 days. So they're frustrated because they're spending money. And, you
Did
know,
you guys talk about this like part of the sales process when you're talking about the timeline and so when they said, "Hey, we want to get this done in 90 days," did you guys say, "Hey, like typically with a team of this kind of makeup and stuff like this, the 90 days doesn't actually happen. Should we talk about a different timeline so that way you're best set up for success?"
yep, yep,
And they still said, "Hey, don't worry about it. We're going to be totally fine. 90 days is going to be good."
yep. That's what they all do. In fact,
Yeah.
they said, actually, we'll get it done before 90. We're good at this.
Man, the bane of my existence in website world was, oh yeah, we don't need copy. We're gonna write that ourselves. No one can talk about our business as good as we did.
Yeah.
And we had when we started the website design company, we did 50% upfront and then 50% upon delivery. And what it was doing was it was really kind of breaking our cash flow because it
Oh,
was
yeah.
just such
Oh, yeah.
everybody thinks that they're like a good writer and then they actually have to sit down and actually write, and then they realize that either A, they're terrible at it, or B, they don't realize they're terrible at it and think that they're really good at it.
Yeah.
So hard to write well. Good Lord. And copy is the biggest lever you have. It's not design. It's not coral pink versus some other kind of pink. It's do do the words on the page resonate with the person who should be buying from you. If not, stop there.
Mhm.
Like go get really good copy
Mhm.
and content.
Yeah.
We have a client, yes, who's one of our real estate clients, and so we're hosting their website, and we told them in the beginning, right? They were working with a guy, and I think he was one of those guys to where he just says, "Cool, I'll just go own everything," right? So I think he owned all the plugins and he had all the credentials and everything else like this. And so whenever we were talking, I said, "Look, we don't do it that way, right? We're going to manage your site, we're going to manage your plugins, we're going to make sure that everything is updated, and then we'll look for ways to build." But like, we're not a design firm. That's not really what we're here to do. We're just trying to make sure that you have a good point of contact and a ticketing system. And I set all these expectations, and they said, "Okay, totally fine." And then it's been not a smooth experience, right? And I've actually gone down to their office, which is down in Cleburne, which is 30 to 45 minutes away, to help them because the level of tech savvy that normally our clients have is here, and they're a little bit lower than that. And then there's also some other things that are kind of indicative of making them different and harder to service them well. Than compared to some of our other clients. The prime one being is that we don't really have a direct line of contact with the broker, the decision maker. We work through his assistant a lot, which
Mhm.
isn't that big of a deal, but uh, this woman has got some expectations that every time she wants something, she's going to be able to hop on the phone with me. And hey, like I told them, look, I'm a sales guy. I'm in meetings a lot. We have this system and processes and a team in place. Um, we need you to use that. And they were like, oh, okay, sure. And then we got an email from them yesterday, and I was already a little bit maybe on edge. And she was like, this is our 4th month of paying this rate, and we really want the site to be exactly where we want it. And I was like, Melissa goes, what do I do with this email? And I was like, you don't need to do anything, I got this. So I sent them an email, and I was like, look, I think our expectations might be a little bit off. We should have a conversation, because I'm no longer convinced that we're the right ones to help you, due to a couple of reasons. Some of this is our fault as we're shifting and changing and implementing systems and processes, but some of this is not on us, right?
Right.
We're not, we don't log into your PayPal account to like make sure that the money's there. That's a you thing. And so some of this we own, and some of it we don't. And I know that there's other people who will be like, cool, like I'm going to own and run your all these plugins, that you have to pay for on a real estate website. And we just don't do it that way. So if you want that level of support, we're not the right ones to help you. So at this point, it's about trying to have a conversation to either reset the conversation or reset the expectations about how we work, or figure out what they really need and then go shake some trees and go try to find that. Because right now there's a gap, and I don't know how much of it is intentional or not, but they don't really want to work in the way that we want to work. And normally, sometimes you can make that stand and it kind of doesn't make sense, but the other clients that we have on this offer don't seem to have a problem, right? And the difference is less tech savvy, less team, and we don't have direct contact with the thing. So this person is like, I've been trying to get on the phone with John for weeks, and Melissa has sent her my link multiple times, and she just doesn't book. So that's not really on us, And so I wrote the email and then walked away, and then came back and checked, and then I walked away again, and then I brought Melissa in. I was like, hey, like, what are your thoughts about this? And she's kind of my being an S type personality. She's my
filter.
Yeah, she's my filter to make sure that I'm not too, C is what that boils down to. But like, at the end of the day, like, I think my frustration is more with the fact that they said it was going to be okay, and now it's not, right? It's not like I don't hold someone's lack of tech savviness against them, right? You just need something else, and that's totally okay. But if this isn't working, let's talk about it and get out in front of it, because I can find you someone who's going to be very high touch and is going to have these phone calls with you and is going to like own all these things. There's some bad things that happen with that. It's really hard to sever the bonds if you ever decide to, and that's kind of what they had gone through before, and their site had been hacked and all of these things. And it's like, there's a level of ownership here that I think you're expecting of someone that you're not paying for when you're paying us, right? So let me go find someone who will do that and fill those shoes for you the right way, if that's really the expectation.
Yeah, that's the constant grind with clients is, I think, fitment. Like if you can get really good at that up front, a lot of these fitment and expectations, because once you get the fitment right, and then you get really good at setting expectations, a lot of these problems like straight up disappear. You're never rid of them, but it's a huge difference. It's a huge one.
Well, so I wrote this email, and then thinking about it last night, I kind of had this moment of like, I should have left that much shorter, right? Because I kind of put some things in there to kind of like, hey, because she copied, the owner, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, right? I kind of got a little ramped up because it felt like very finger pointing on Melissa, and then she copied the owner and everything else, and I was like, okay, wait a minute, I feel like I need to step in here, and I should have just kept it really, really short and been like, hey, let's have a call, because I don't think I'm concerned that we're not the right ones to help you anymore, and moved it directly to a call. But I kind of felt the need to kind of like reset the expectations for everybody involved, because we don't really talk too much with the owner. We only talk to her, and they're tied to some other clients that we work with and everything else like this. So it's important that it's like, hey, look, I can own probably 80% of this, but this other 20% is not on us, and it's we're not gonna accept any kind of ownership over that stuff, because we've been in front of the things that we can own. So
yeah.
You got to pick your battles. And Melissa goes, hey, are we going to be okay if we lose them as a client? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, if they leave, what happens? And I'm like, then they leave. Like, that's it, you know? And she goes, well, like, are we gonna be okay? And I was like, you know, this is $100 a month client. And I said, you know, we're not sweating $100 a month, you know? And she's like, well, what if they leave and that causes them? And I'm like, then they all leave. That's totally fine. And I would rather work with people who see the value in what we do, and there's like a value alignment there and the relationship is good. But I'm not dragging anybody around beholden to us and paying a monthly invoice because, you know, because we need the revenue. I can go find revenue someplace else.
Yeah, for less headache.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm actually off this Wednesday.
Oh, okay. I was wondering. I looked up and I saw that it was 8:10. I was like, oh man, Jake's gonna be late. Sorry, man.
Yeah. No, it's an off week actually. I still actually have an 8:30, but yeah, we get a couple of those a year. So
what do you have
cool.
today then? Since you're gonna be in the office, you have an 8:30?
I do. I have a couple follow-up calls with people who just kind of showed up, who I've had sales calls with before. So, and they're people that we went through the process and left it at a nice spot. They just and liked our offer, but just weren't ready, budget or, you know, one of the seven, right? And so they both randomly reached out to us. To say, hey, I think we're ready to pick this back up. So we've got two of those calls to have both happen today, completely separate. So that's really cool.
What are your biggest concerns about these two calls and the fact that they've come back? You know, like what, when you dig deep, what do you hung up on mentally about these calls?
One of them, I'm actually really confident will probably close today. Like, I feel really good about the call. I really believe that they wanted to work with us. It was just a matter of them going and figuring out finances. The other one, it's kind of like the one you were like, you know how you'll tell me I got somebody booked on my schedule. I have no idea who it is. It was one of those at first. I had to even go back and look who it was. And went back and looked in the CRM. It wasn't somebody I talked to very long, and I don't remember much about our conversation. Even though I had notes and everything in there, it's not clicking for me like that from that, like, oh yeah, I remember this. Like I remember how they felt and kind of what their issues were. I just don't have that feeling about this one. So I'm kind of in the dark a little bit. Obviously I know what the business is, and it seemed more like we were getting screened the last time versus an actual great conversation.
Interesting.
So it's always interesting when they come back, you know?
Yeah.
That leads me to believe that they picked somebody else and did not have a good experience. And we're getting a call back.
How do you, okay, so what are your thoughts on how you're going to navigate that conversation with intention as opposed to making much of
I'm gonna ask them, you know, how they solved the problem last time. Like, what did you guys end up doing last time after we had this conversation? You know, what action did y'all take to figure out last year? Because I think if we're talking through that, I'm hoping to get some more information about really what the issue is based on, you know, asking what they did to solve it last time.
We have some comments real quick. Good morning, Gabe. Good morning, Levi. Yes, we are both stubborn Bills.
Yes, dang Skippy, I saw that.
So yeah.
Good morning, Bills.
So, all right. So you have this client. You felt like you got screened by them last time. They came back. You're unclear on some of the details. Like, how do you feel about this call? Like as an I, right? Do you feel some pressure of, I don't know, like, what are you feeling mentally?
A little amused, really. Just like, okay, cool. We can talk again. That's really it. Like, I think I would probably be more nervous or something else if the call went well and then they didn't choose us last time, or if the call went really badly and okay, why are they calling us back? You know, but it's so neutral. I'm kind of like, I guess what they did didn't work. Or I don't know. I don't have a lot of emotion tied to it at the moment.
I mean, I think that's the right way to go, right? I was just curious because it's taken me a long time to have something on the calendar and not immediately go into like fact finding mode. So that way I feel like I'm prepared for the call, right? Which is largely just doing enough research that I can make wild assumptions and accusations that don't actually serve me on the call.
Yeah, I was about to ask.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking, I think with maybe Levi, and I was just talking about how I purposefully don't do research or too much research on people that I talk to anymore, because what happens is I just can't help myself. I start making these, right. I'll go look at a site and I'm like, oh, that site,
Yeah.
it's not fantastic. They don't have a budget. I'm not gonna be able to work with them. Why? How could that possibly be helpful to the conversation I need to have with them?
Yeah.
Maybe they just don't know. Maybe their design tastes are different. Maybe their nephew designed the site, and who really knows.
Right.
So I kind of hold myself back from doing a bunch of research now, because I kind of feel like my skill set has developed to the point where I don't really need to, right? I can hop onto these calls and have really good deep conversations without uh, without a net, right? Because like the net, in my opinion, is the agreements you make with people. It's not how prepared you are. It's not how perfect you are in the moment. You can be perfect, you can be prepared, and if you don't have permission to talk about it, you can still get shut down, right? And if you don't have buy-in,
Absolutely.
they're not going to
You
be
know what?
they're not going to be there with you anyway.
Obviously Awesome did for me was one of the chapters talks about, you know, customers typically aren't thinking about your competitors. They're thinking about what their own alternatives are.
Mm-hmm.
And that reinforced that idea for me that sure, I mean, I'm going to go check out your website. I'm going to see what you do. I'm going to see how you talk about your business, just kind of see where you're starting from. But that's about it. Like, because what you said is my whole goal is to, number one, get permission to talk about the things that make sense for the call. And then number two, ask some questions that cause them to start talking and me to listen and really be curious and understand what their actual issue is. It's like you said, if I can't do that, then why are we on a call?
Yeah. So when I first learned about like framing and setting expectations and everything else like this, it was very much in a sales focused format. And
Mhm.
then as I continue to read and learn stuff and kind of like make it my own, is that there's some concepts around like flow states, right? That allow you to get deeper into conversation, and time dilates, and some really interesting things happen as far as like learning and building trust and rapport. And what I have kind of shifted to is I need to set the expectation so that way both of us can focus on the conversation we need to have, right? So if you're stressed out about, okay, we talked before, but why are we talking now? Then that would be part of my framing and setting of expectations. Jake, when we spoke before, I kind of got the impression that maybe you were just kind of kicking some tires and trying to figure this thing out, and now we're back talking about it again. What's been going on between the last conversation
Change.
and you booking now? Like what's been going on with this kind of thing?
Yeah.
Did you try it on your own? Did you try it with somebody else? Has it just been on the back burner?
Mhm.
And really
Yeah.
digging into that. And that conversation is easier when you set an expectation of like, hey, we'll talk for the next hour. At the end of it, we'll have to figure out if there's a fit here or not. It might mean another conversation. It might mean that we close the file at the end of this. Either one is totally okay. I think my biggest kind of question is, why are we back?
Mhm.
It. I didn't get the impression that the call went amazingly well, and we didn't end up doing anything. Can I ask what's changed? Right, and just lead with that. Get it out of the way
Yeah.
so that way you can then, because man, if you're holding that focus in your head and that concern, it's keeping you out of any potential to be in flow in that sales conversation, right? And really get deep in the trenches with them to like understand,
Yeah.
because on some level we hold ourselves apart, right? Because it's like, I can't get too excited about this. So
Yeah. When
there's
you're continuing to wonder why they like dropped you or why they, why it was such a short call last time, but now we're back. Like you hold on to that until you put it out there for them to answer. You may not like to answer, but at least you've kind of unloaded it so you can push it aside and get to the conversation at hand.
Yeah, absolutely. um yeah, for me, and I's and D's don't really have this problem, right? Because you're so gut driven. But like as a C who's fact driven, like I really feel uncomfortable in conversations to where we're going to have a conversation around something that might be uncomfortable, if that makes sense, right? Um,
Like conflict or like lack of expectation.
Uh,
Or
hmm.
both?
That's a really good question. I'm not really scared of like conflict in a conversation, really. Is that true? I don't know if I believe that or not. But really, it's just about making myself feel comfortable, so that way we can. So that way, as the guy who's had lots of these conversations, I can uh, feel able to run my program. Make sure that we're on the same page, checking the boxes together and stuff like this. So that way, we don't end up in the same spot again of following up into a void, and they've already made a decision that they just didn't tell you because they didn't feel comfortable. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
I think so. Yeah, because like once like I don't as a DEA conflict doesn't bother me. I'm more I feel being embarrassed or like I'm unequipped to a call. Like if I get asked a question that I can't answer and I feel like I should be the answer and I feel embarrassed, I'm much more like that's more the fears I have in conversations than because I'll go straight at a piece of conflict that doesn't bother me to a fault sometimes, which is why I feel like copywriting has also been a really great thing for me because I have to figure out how to say things simply and clearly uh, without all the extra language. Because I don't know about you, I've been on phone calls with especially salespeople that they'll just be talking and talking and
Oh,
talking. I'm like, I know where you're about to go with this question. Would you just ask me the question? And
yep.
some of that's D, and some of that's my D, right? But some of it's though just a human going, you're posturing so heavily right now that you're making it uncomfortable that when you actually ask the question, just ask me the question.
Yep. There's a guy on Facebook, and he did a post, and he was like, "Hey, who here has a podcast?" And it showed up in my feed, and I was like, "Well, I have a podcast. I don't know if you're looking for guests or two guests, but here we go." And so I dropped the link in there, and of course he sent me a friend a request, and I accepted. And now you can tell that he's trying to position his questions in a way to figure out if there's something for us to talk about, right? And when people do this well, nobody cares, right? And this is really important, right? Because you have gone through this process with people and not even been aware of it because it has been so smooth because it's been relevant and seamless and there's trust and rapport. But this guy's questions have been, um, I can just pull up the conversation on my other screen. Hold on one second. But he's like, it's how did he say it? Well, I'm sure you have a team working with you to get the podcast done. And I was like, well, that feels like
Yeah.
a big old bear trap of a question, right? If I say yes, are you then just puff of smoke and gone? If I say no, do you then say, oh, well, I have a team here? So I
Did you ask him why do you ask?
well, I didn't, right? But I was in the middle of my surly mood yesterday, right? In later in the afternoon, and I was like, "Look, man, if you have an offer around podcasting, I'm totally open to hearing it, right? As long as you're open to the fact that I might tell you that I don't need it. Are you okay with
Yeah.
that?" And haven't heard from him. I mean, like on some levels, I feel like it's self-serving and a little finger waggy when I'm like, look, just lead with this. But
I
on the
can't.
other hand, it's like I know what you're doing. I'm totally fine with it because like you're at least making an effort to do it the right way. I'm now giving you permission, but that permission is you also have to buy into the fact that I might tell you no because I'm not going to just disappear on somebody or not intentionally anyway. It's not intentional. But let's get it out of the way, right? If you have something that you think is relevant to me, pitch me. Just don't lead with it. Like, oh, I got something on LinkedIn the other day. And when you hit accept and you kind of cringe for a minute because like you're just looking down at the base of the
Yeah.
screen and waiting for it to like start
Yeah.
flashing with like a message, and then like you click on it and you're still kind of like cringing and holding yourself back because like you're just waiting for like the big block paragraph of text, and then like they know that it's too long, so then there's like a line break in like the smaller paragraph of like when would it doesn't even make any sense, honestly.
The worst.
um but like don't lead with it, like, but hey, if you have a service around podcasts, I have a podcast, like let's talk about it, right? I'm totally down. But if you really want to have rapport and like try to do like the genuine curiosity and try to uncover stuff, that doesn't happen in a DM. You got to get to a phone call like pretty quickly because of how busy everybody is and how transactional text can be. I think that the level of trust and rapport via like text and DMs and everything has got to be higher than it is if you're on a phone call because it's harder to build that trust because of the lack of visual cues and nonverbal communication that we have access to on phone calls. So
Yeah, yeah. And I'll probably have to lead with this. Yeah, I guess maybe let's sit on this and maybe talk about it tomorrow, because I have this theory that if you get to DM, it's time to put your ask sequence in place. Once you've hit DM, it's time to start like your sales process, because you're not going to build trust. Like you just said, it's really hard to build trust in DMs because everyone's on super, super high guard. And it's not a super humane touch point, right? Like the phone call, the Zoom call, that stuff, right? So if you want to build trust, you do that through your content, you do that through collaborative efforts, you do that through all sorts of different ways, right? So by the time that I'm taking someone to DM, I don't have to worry about, am I building trust here in the DM? It's like, here's my sequence, because either I've built the trust or I haven't, and I'll know very quickly, right? And this is like kind of the sales side. This is a John Hill learning for me, is like, if I get them into a DM and they're willing, like I'm not like chasing them into the DMs, like they're willing to come in DM and I do the sequence and they say no, then they're not ready. I haven't built enough trust, or they didn't like my offer. And so to me, they go back into my circle and they build more trust, and I catch them later, or I don't. So that's just kind of where like I'm at personally with social media. I used to stress a ton over the DMs, but as soon as I personally made that mind shift to, oh no, this is DMs is where sales sequence happen, and I have a sequence for it. Now, is it working? That's a different question. I got to measure it and do all those different things. But like, I'm not stressed about DMs anymore. Is not 100% not stressed, because it's still sales and it's still stressful for me, but way less than it used to be. So I'd be interested on your thoughts. If that's the same way you see DMs.
So I've kind of shifted to DMs as kind of like the discovery part, right? Oh, hey, I'm looking for a closer. Okay, why? Well, I'm tired of taking these calls myself. Okay, why? What's your expectation, right? And so everything's a question. Everything's about trying to like understand. But I am not presenting anything over a DM. Like, I'm not talking pricing. I'm not talking my process. I'm not talking timelines, anything like that, because I still want to have the conversation. And here's the deal. If you don't want to have a conversation and you just want to collect everything over DM, you're not a client for me right now anyway, right? You're not bought in, you're kicking tires, or maybe I interrupted your day, and those things happen, and that's totally okay. But when there's a need and you can ask and there's trust there's a call that happens, right? And on that call is where you make your money as a salesperson, right? Like, marketers are different, that's totally okay. But I purposefully hold myself pretty far back in DMs these days, because it doesn't serve me. Like I've never gotten anything from a DM to close, right? And that's not good or bad. It's just how I want to work, right? Like, I think if you're marketing and you're doing group stuff and you can come down off of your pricing and do all that kind of stuff, I think that works just fine. That's not really how I want to do my business, though. So
right. And the only thing that to that point, I'm the same way. The DMs for discovery to see if a call makes sense. But I will sell down to my group if it makes a whole lot of sense in DMs. Like, if it's an obvious, like, I'm not because I have a high ticket item. It takes a long amounts of time, and through discovery, I can pretty quickly figure out if they're going to be even worth a conversation on the phone most of the time. So it's like, no, but I really like your stuff. Cool. I'll get this group you can hang out in if you want.
Interesting.
Cool. I gotta run. 2 minutes.
You gotta go. 2 minutes.
All right.
Is this the unknown call, or is this the?
No,
the other?
That's it. Like the one.
Oh, okay. Awesome, man. All right, buddy. Well, I'll be done at 4:15. I'll send you another kung fu video, and we'll keep going.
All right. See you guys.
See you.
See you, Bill.
See you, Bill.